I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Waltz.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today, for testifying is a critical issue. Dr. McNutt, you mentioned in your testimony women in STEM and science and technology. I agree with you. We've made gains. I don't think we've made enough. I think incentivizing women to have interest and pursue careers in STEM is critical to fully utilizing our talent base and competing long term. And in fact, it's not just about competitive. It's not just it's not a domestic issue. It's an international issue. It's a national security issue, in my view. And my background as a Green Beret and operating all over the world, I mean, the bottom line is where women thrive in business and civil society, in politics, extremism doesn't. I mean, not to be sophomoric, but I think that's just my experience. So question is, how do we make STEM education more attractive, interesting? How can this body assist? Why are more women not attracted to this field, and how can we continue to move that forward?
Well, thank you for that question. I used to think very naively that the reason why we had this leaky pipeline problem, we saw in many fields, my own field in particular, 50% of the students in graduate school were women. Mm-hmm. And that had been that way for a long time. Why weren't we seeing them come out the other end into the associate professors and the full professors? It wasn't happening. I thought it was just a quality of life issue. Maybe they're too smart to be stupid like us and think that a career in science was a lot of fun. And then my eyes were opened by this report that the National Academy of Sciences did that showed that there is this undercurrent of harassment for women that has gone underground. That it used to be out in the open, it went underground, that was just the, oh dear, 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 you don't really belong in science, do you? Or wouldn't you be happier doing this instead? And it was just, or the little put-downs that were discouraging too many women. And we just have to stop that. And of course, it happens everywhere. It happens in law. It happens in business. But it's worse in science. And the reason it's worse in science is because this indentured servant model, where students come in and they're attached to a supervisor who is responsible for their funding, for their research project, for their recommendations after they graduate, and it makes it much more difficult for them to cut loose in a bad situation.
Dr. Mann, didn't mean to interrupt you. Just in the interest of time, I'd be interested in follow-up on how we could,
Yes.
how we could help.
Yes.
Dr. Gallagher, I'm interested in your comment a minute ago about guidance when it comes to the Chinese, frankly, just stealing our IP and our technological edge across the board. I'm also on the Armed Services Committee, and it is just wholesale theft in their national interest, and certainly not in ours. So what guidance do you need? Do you need a categorization of what is considered sensitive? Do you need standards on what needs to be protected? I certainly don't want to limit the growth in your freedom, but what do you need?
So, my take is that the exfiltration of American IP and sensitive information to China has been happening for a long time. This is not a recent phenomenon. And so, lack of enforcement, lack of, protections. I think some of the positions that U.S. companies have been put where they have to operate in China and they have to, basically spill over.
I think the administration's getting at that pretty aggressively.
But the flip side has also been part of U.S. science policy for a long time, in fact, since the opening of China in the 1970s, that science was a form of scientific diplomacy, that we wanted to be there openly and collaborating with the hope that the Chinese at one point would be contributors to the knowledge commons of fundamental science. So in some ways that's happening as well. They're now producing papers and actually contributing. So we have this dilemma where the competitive nature of China with the United States, whether geopolitically or economically, the question is, does that mean we should stop collaborating on the science side as well? And that's where I think there's...
No, I'm asking you.
My instinct is no. I think that there's a win because most science has been done with broad open collaboration. The rising tide rises all boats, and I would much rather see the U.S. not subsidize the technology around the world. We'd like to see more countries contribute to basic science. The problem is matching those concerns we have when it becomes specific, nationally related or commercially related information with this window when it's presumably open and all for the good.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Karen.
much.